everyone. We have now all the gentlemen amongst our meets. So, a warm welcome to all of you again on behalf of APAC News Network to the second Global Education and Skills Conclave. We had a very memorable inaugural session today morning with a lot of eminent speakers speaking about the direction education, especially both higher education and school education, is taking in India, especially in a post-pandemic world, and what sort of direction technology is helping in education chart its course. So before I start, just formally to introduce each of the panelists again, because we have a very esoteric set of panelists representing eminent academic institutions amongst our midst, and I'm sure it will be a very insightful discussion, which will be very useful for the entire education fraternity who are joining the second Global Education and Skills Conclave today. So we have amongst us Dr. Niranajan Hiranandani. He is a provost of the HSNC University, and the president Nardeco and co-founder and MD of the Hiranandani Group, based out of Mumbai. We have Dr. Madhu Chitkara, the pro-chancellor of Chitkara University. We have Mr. Sudhanshu Varma, the chief operating officer of Bennett University. We have Mr. Vineet Gupta, the founder and trustee of Ashoka University. And we have Aditya Berlia, co-promoter of Apeejay Education. And before we start the discussion, I'd just like to point and express my thanks to all the partners who have associated in the APAC Second Global Education and Skills Conclave, without whose association such a major event of such magnitude is never possible. So I would like to thank the Education Department of the Government of Gujarat. I would like to thank Education in Ireland. I would like to thank Coursera. I would like to thank ViewSonic, Globus, PayU, FlipLearn, Chitkara University, HBB Global Academy, the Government of Andhra Pradesh, Intercell, Government of Chhattisgarh, Government of Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand government, and all the partners without whose association, again, as I reiterate, event of such scale is not possible. So today, for this panel discussion, our topic is focused on virtual universities, virtual campuses, and collaborative learning. Last 1.5 years, the whole world has lived through a situation, in this pandemic-driven situation, where one of the most severe impact, if we say, has been on the education system and on the students. So even while the impact on the school students has been to a certain psychological level, even on the higher education side, there has been definite impact. It can be in terms of the assessments, how universities assess, not being able to attend physical classes, not being able to have the feeling of a physical campus, and not being able to ultimately get assessed in a proper physical examination. So we would like to discuss some of these points. So very broadly, just some of the points that we would like to discuss we'll try to identify what are the benefits as well as the bottlenecks of a virtual campus. There's what are the resources today which support collaborative learning, especially in a virtual mode. And then going forward, even if the pandemic impact reduces, maybe for the foreseeable future, we may not go back to a completely physical mode of learning. So in this hybrid education model where both physical and virtual will coexist, how according to each of you things will shape up? And one more important thing I would like them to know is the assessments and exams. How can universities ensure that these virtual exams or assessments are not compromised so that they might impact the student's career later? So I would like to start with Dr. Hiranandani first, and maybe put the first question in terms of what do you think are the benefits and a bottleneck in a virtual campus, and especially talking in terms of HSNC University, which is sort of compromising HR College, comprising of HR College, KC College, and the Bombay Teachers Training College. And you have bachelor's in vocational training and courses ready. So some of you would be having the experience of a virtual campus. So how would you estimate the pros and cons of these virtual campuses?
Uh, Thank you very much, Rajneesh, for inviting me over here to this panel. And I feel delighted to be amongst these illustrious people whom I respect so much in the cause of education. Each and every one of them is respected and looked up. I look up to all of them as my models, and I look up them as my mentors. I must respect all of them personally. I must talk about Vineet Gupta and the fantastic Ashoka University, Mr. Berlia, Apeejay, Madhu, Chitkara, and Mr. Varma of Bennett. All of them are my mentors, so to say, and I look up to all of them. But I will share only my experiences in the education field. We comprise of besides the HSNC University, we look after the entire board, which comprises of about 45,000 students who were completely offline. So the 14 colleges in Mumbai completely have been offline, and there was no question of any online platform before the COVID situation came. However, when the HSNC University was formed, we discussed that, which was 6 months earlier. We presented this to the government. We had talked about 25% being online education. Number two, we were looking at continuing education in a different sort of way, as being an online platform would be more useful and possibility to do it. And of course, the fact that technology has made this change. Now let's take a fast forward to the COVID situation. The COVID situation taught us something quite different. Within 45 days of the COVID lockdown, which was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister, we were able to put 90% of our students online. Now that was a fantastic achievement, which all our institutions with 2,500 teachers, non-teachers and others were able to manage that part of it. We fumbled a lot, and we had lots and lots and lots of resistance from our teachers. Something I couldn't believe, something which I didn't think would ever happen as far as our institution was concerned. But today, talk to them, many of them don't want to come offline. They want to be an online teacher only. They found new ways of handling it, new things of technology. They're very comfortable with it. In fact, they've been able to leverage onto it, and this is a positive element that we see. So we saw two extreme situations. 100% offline platform before COVID, getting into a COVID situation, which is online, and then now finding very great amount of comfort on the online platform. However, excellence has not come into our institution yet on an online platform. And this is something which I am really sorry about, that we haven't been able to get the excellence which other online education systems have been able to create. And so I think that's the negative part of the whole story. But having said that, we are fast learners, and we hope in the next couple of weeks, months, and years, we will be able to have excellence and emulate the good examples of what other institutions are doing on the online platform. three advantages which I see completely in terms of the online platform. One, we are able to get teachers from any part of the world and to be able to speak online with our people. So I could get a teacher from the US, Africa, Central America, Australia, Hong Kong, everything to get and teach our students. And this is a comfort level which we would never have been able to get earlier to the pre-COVID too. The second, we are able to do it at the time and convenience of many of our students. On our new platforms, which we have done on an MBA degree, the students want the early morning and late evening hours for the purpose of education. We are able to readjust all these timings on the online platform, which would not have been possible on the offline situation that we think that we can do. And the third, we're able to create new systems which in fact are much more proficient in terms of learning and teaching. And the new systems are basically that we have background material, video material, and other materials which are available, which a common classroom teacher is unable to use. So, or unable to use efficiently enough. So my reading is that over a period of years, thanks to this bloody COVID, we have learnt new methodologies in education. And to add on one more point, I do believe that this new technology will go a long way to reach the poorest of poor, to reach the remotest of villages, and we will be able to do this efficiently. So I think there is a plus to this change on online platform which is taking place, but it is not an easy process. It is not a smooth process. It is difficult, but we are fast learners, and I'm sure that with technology platforms and people in education that we have, and all the other mentors that I have over here on my panel today, I will be able to learn from them and be able to do things more efficiently in the future than we have done in the past. These are my few first remarks that I would like to.
Thanks a lot, sir. That was very illustrative. In fact, you mentioned maybe I don't know if it's right to say like that, but one positive impact of COVID, especially on education, has been learning this new methodology of training. And as you mentioned, many of the teachers now only want to teach online. So I'll come next to Mr. Vineet Gupta. My question is more on the collaborative learning. This digital learning resources, how they support collaborative learning. We know Ashoka University has a collaborative learning program with Yale University, and you also have the collaborations with the likes of ThoughtWorks and Cambridge BP Institute in the CIC. So, in light of those, what are the positives that you have seen from collaborative learning, and how that experience can be replicated by other academic institutions? Mr. Gupta.
Well, I think thank you firstly, Rajneesh, for inviting me, and it was just wonderful to hear Dr. Hiranandani as always. He and I have had the opportunity to be at ASOCHAM together, and delighted to see the other eminent panelists. I echo what Dr. Hiranandani said in terms of just learning from each other and the sort of support and mentorship we get from each other. Rajneesh, to your question, some of these collaborations have been there for long. I think right from the time we started in 2014. We believe these collaborations have helped us and our students in a variety of ways. With different institutions, there are specific research collaborations that we have. Yale in particular, we collaborate on the Center for South Asia. With some other institutions, we collaborate on entrepreneurship. With HEC in France, we collaborate on business. All of these do open up opportunities for our students to go and study. I think, so we do have arrangements where you can do a semester in any of the partner institutions, or and I'm sure many other institutions here have similar arrangements. or perhaps you can even do an year. For one of our programs, have we do have a master's program called the Young India Fellowship, which is 1 year, and the second year of that program you can do at UPenn. So I think a lot of these are in the nature of students being able to study at partner institutions, and these models of partnership have existed for long. The second way in which these collaborations have helped is uh, really in contributing to joint research projects which faculty take up, and then they involve students, and students get an opportunity to also take up research early and also visit partner institutions. I think the third way it has helped us is we do get a lot of visiting faculty from some of these institutions, so that has been extremely helpful. And lastly, I think when our students graduate and they are looking to study abroad, some of these partnerships again make study abroad meaningful and advantageous. So that's the question specifically on collaborations. I do want to add some more comments to what Dr. Hiranandani said on online learning, hybrid learning, what the future could be. I think he really captured the essence very well. I should really echo that all of us, when we move from a total uh, in-person campus to a virtual campus, all of us had great learnings, and pretty much everybody adapted on the run. Now the pandemic has been on for almost 16, 17 months, and I must say my views have changed uh, a little bit from the time we started. When the time we started and we moved to this online world, I was pretty amazed at what all technology could do. And in some sense, one was feeling that, this could be a good substitute for the physical classroom. And which will remain. I think technology can really replicate the classroom in wonderful ways, and for skill upgradation, for really enhancing one's knowledge, for really taking learning to remote parts of the country for the underprivileged. I think technology is going to play a key part. So I think that's been the big gain. The one view I have changed quite dramatically, which is very evident, is that uh, college education, school education, a lot of the education is not just about being in the classroom. It's also being with one another, peer learning, uh, learning to live together. I think some of our fondest memories of college life are on campus, being with other students. And that, I think, also the pandemic has reminded us in very stark ways. After 16 months, every student is yearning to be back in the classroom. I mean, we are just getting demand from our students that they want to be back on campus. So the pandemic, in some sense, has proven that too. That I now think maybe the online world can't fully replace the classroom. Technology, online learning will greatly enhance learning experience, but I am of the view that it may not be able to replace the classroom, because there's much more to education than just what you learn inside the classroom. So I did want to add, and I think some of the other points have been captured by Dr. Hiranandani very well, so I don't want to repeat those. But thank you, Rajneesh. I hope that sort of answers the question you raised to me, and I also added some more comments.
Sure, thank you. That's a very interesting observation, and maybe to a certain extent, that is true that a physical classroom can never be completely replaced by a virtual classroom or a virtual campus, because there are certain other human emotional elements attached to education also. I'll come to you, Mr. Berlia, now. Again, the in terms of a virtual campus, what sort of infrastructure or virtual campus you are currently offering, and you also have a collaboration program, virtual collaboration program with Greenwich University, which is working. So, your experience in terms of how the virtual campuses have fared in the last 1.5 years, and how are we looking ahead?
Anish, thank you so much for having me. And as I said at the start, it's always wonderful to see great mentors and such esteemed panelists with me. I won't repeat what Shri Hiranandani and Shri Vineet Gupta has said. I think all educators have had very similar experiences. I'd like to share a couple of points from our side. We were very, very fortunate because in the past 10 years, across our education group, and that includes our 16 schools, about 13 colleges, and of course the university, we had a very aggressive online and blended program. So when the lockdown happened in Delhi, which was the earliest, within 24 hours, we actually went to 90% full virtual online learning. Now, this meant, of course, it wasn't easy. We fumbled through as everybody else. I think I didn't sleep for 3 months at that time. And we went from something like 200, 300 concurrent users to, 35,000, then 65,000. And as everybody else had experienced, the technology became easy after a little bit of struggle. I think it was really the physical side of it, because it's not that what we had in very traditional virtual environments, right? We have great studios, great mics, systems ready, multiple cameras, and that's how you do on very professional online education classes. This was literally a faculty member managing a baby, holding up a phone at the same time trying to run a class. So I just want to put into perspective that the pandemic experience of virtual education was not the super professional studios and people coming in with assistants and all, which is what we had been used to, but really everybody sort of doing whatever they could in their own homes with the limitations. On the infrastructure, I think for me, there are a few key learnings that we had. One, certainly the human element is more important than the technology. You cannot imagine how grateful I am that COVID happened in 2020, 2021. Had this happened 10 years ago, none of this would have been possible. Even 5 years ago, none of this would have been possible. Just giving access to bandwidth. Our students are from all across the world. Many of them have gone back to their rural areas. Just about 25% of our students didn't even have access to devices at home because they were counting on onshore infrastructure. We had to mail them laptops. We had to send phones to faculty members' houses. We had to work with telecom operators to get them internet connections, particularly those from low-income backgrounds who we'd given scholarships. They required a lot more support. And this took 2 to 3 months to really set up. As we went through this, it became very clear and that we come from a position of great privilege. And I think everybody here on this panel comes from a position of great privileges. We are at the top of in India in terms of institutions. We have fantastic faculty and leaders who are able to adapt. We have endowments, money, and systems that were able to fund this sort of infrastructure. So I'd like to dismiss a couple of thoughts that people normally have when I talk to a layperson around virtual education. First, it is extraordinarily more expensive to deliver education virtually than to do it in the physical realm. I think there is this notion that people have that, campus is closed, so therefore, there are no expenses for campus and everything is online, so online must be cheap. No, the actual technology, the time, the effort it takes to set up a class, to do it both for the faculty members and for behind the scenes is actually much more expensive than running it on a physical mode. This is if you're doing it right. When we are talking about virtual education, we're not talking about lectures on YouTube and distance education. We're talking about fully engaged virtual education where you have a faculty member trying to replicate as much of a physical class as possible while extending it to the virtual realm. Second, it is not sustainable in my opinion. I fully echo the previous two panelists. I think as we've gone through COVID, we have seen that this is not a sustainable model for the entire world. This is a luxury. It is a luxury from several perspectives. One, how many people have an extra room in their house that they can dedicate to learning just for themselves or for their child, or can rent an accommodation just to have peace of mind where they can attend a fully virtual education or college? The answer is not that many. How many people have the level of internet, speed, connection, time, effort, a local community of support, all the things that a physical campus has to provide? It is not possible in a country like India really to expect everybody to do that. Certainly, students who come to us from very privileged backgrounds, and because of our standards and our fees, we do tend to get middle class, upper middle class, and of course our scholarship students. But even they struggled. So you can't expect this to happen for the entire country. So we do need to get back to physical education as soon as possible, because the virtual realm will be a have and a have not. The third thing for me, what was wonderful, quite frankly, is that all of us were able to test the extremes. I mean, in the last 5 to 10 years, I have gone on multiple panels. Everybody here has been on multiple panels talking about our vision for technology, blended education. But we all knew it would take us 5 to 10 years to get stakeholder buy-in, to actually get things together, to actually try a lot of the experiments we wanted. We did all those experiments as a country, as a society, as a global connected institute within 3 to 6 months. And I think that has been an extraordinary educative experience for a lot of people. First, for our faculty, and I can tell you, and I echo Dr. Hiranandani's view on this, a lot of them went from being worried to loving it, right? And I see, a celebrated 60-year-old professor who is, has multiple tenures and all, who needed 2 assistants and one technology person just to do one online seminar. Now so comfortable that he has his phone, he has his laptop, and he says, I don't need anybody, I can do this myself. So we empowered so many faculty members and gave them the personal confidence that they can do this because they had no choice and they stepped up. Second, parents and students. I think virtual education still had the tag that this is distance education. And a lot of parents, particularly, and India still at the undergraduate level, these are the decision makers, were able to see what a full engaged virtual class looks like. And they understood now the difference between a virtual education and a distance education. These are not online videos where people are doing homework and notes, but the full classroom experience. And I think that opened the mind of so many key decision makers, parents and students. And the last I have to speak about is regulators. One of the most happiest things that has happened, that they waited for 6 months of COVID to happen before the new NEP draft was released to the public. And you can see the mental transition that happened in regulations between the initial 300-page draft and the 65-page draft and the final 63, on seeing what is the possibility of really looking at blended education. So I think for the regulators to also be able to gain the confidence that this is serious education, this is not something that, is a tech phenomenon or a fancy thing for a few, or it's just for the masses, but it's a serious endeavor of excellence. That said, I fully echo Vineet's comments. More and more, as we spend time with our students, as we spend time, I think virtual education has a place. And we certainly have gained a lot in terms of figuring out how to do a hybrid model, how to really work with students on a lot of these things. But at the end of the day, there is going to be no substitute for a physical intensive classroom experience. And that's something which I'm really hoping for us to return to. And for those of us who continue, and we certainly will on a virtual platform, I hope it will be a continuation of all the learnings we've had, and more in terms of a designed method, and not that people are sitting in jail in their homes and trying their best to conduct classes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berlia. Basically, 2 very critical things came up. One, that the physical education or training can never replace, virtual education can never replace the physical education mode. And the second important part I felt was this emergence that virtual education is not distance education. Rather, it's the complete on-campus education, only in a virtual mode. So I'll come to you, Dr. Chitkara, next in terms of one, the virtual campuses, your experience in Chitkara University, and also a little bit on the collaborative learning and how that has helped. I think your university has a connection with the Vancouver Island University, and there are a host of other industry bodies also which you collaborate with. So how have they helped in running these virtual campuses?
First of all, thank you, APAC, for giving me this opportunity. And I am with my all panelists. First of all, I must thank Dr. Hiranandani, because he said that we all are the mentors to him. But I disagree with it. because you are a great mentor for all of us. So it was a great modesty on your part, and I always love Aditya and Vineet, because they are. I love them because they are just like my next generation coming into education and giving us such a great platform to us to emulate. So I think I must learn something from them. They are very young and they are into education, and they are giving us such a great way path to follow, because now our generation has gone to next step, and now they are very young, very energetic, and we learn in every this you can say any of the platforms like this. I learn a lot from them. So thank you very much for them to be in my panel. Your question was that, Rajneesh, you were asking that how we are collaborating with other institutes, and how this, and I think somebody in my panel talked about it, that how the digital learning resource support the collaborative learning about it. So if you see about that, we have a collaboration with international universities. It is more than 145. And during the lockdown, we were very fortunate enough that they were collaborating with our researchers as well as with our students. So we did the collaborative sessions with them. And previously that they were coming to our campus, and because that collaboration was that they have to teach physically to our students, and now they were not able to come. But during pandemic, I have seen that those sessions were so effective and it was so collaborative that we all learned a lot. Our students enjoyed those sessions. And if you see that, I will just give you that how we work. So the latest is the future of work is all collaborative. So if you want to learn, if you want to work collaboratively, so this is a very different word where we can work giving them the project. So what we started doing is that in 2014, we started with the project-based learning. We were very ahead of it, that in Chitkara University, we started with the project-based learning, and the results were too good that they were started working in teams. The students were enjoying those. So I think that again used here, but it was in a virtual mode. So it was very different. And educators worldwide were doing the more work in teams, and then shifting the classroom practice from the previous methods were the individual learning activities to the collaborative learning strategies. And I think there were a growing number of ways that technology is boosting that collaboration in learning. So if you talk about that, how we did it, so those were the communicating tools where we worked under the Google's G Suite. We worked with the Microsoft Office 365, and I think all of us worked with the Microsoft Office and provide a collaborative document creation and editing the space for teams. So all the teams were using it. And the latest was that when the collaborating was there, that bloggers came into a great help to our students. You know that the students of this era, they are very technically very sound. So during this pandemic, because we said that we immediately shift to online, well said by Aditya also, that we shifted to online mode within, he said that we shifted in 24 hours. And since we were also having our technology and digital campus was there for the last 10 years. So we were very comfortable shifting to the online mode. The only thing was some of the professors, they were not very comfortable with this type of learning or with this type of teaching learning processes. So what we did, that we did a team teaching where the collaborative learning was done in a way, the people who were not very comfortable in the online mode, so we gave the responsibilities to them to prepare the notes, to support the team, those who are very comfortable. In the first case, we can say that they were very comfortable in front of the cameras or in front of giving them the online lectures. So in that way, that collaboration worked a lot, and same happened with the international collaborations also. So I think that was a great support to all the education institutes where we worked with the different. So that was the best part, was the project-based learning. if you see that we were just talking about that how evaluations were done or how the teams were working. So in that way, we gave the projects, and if you see that creating the projects, that was the first pyramid of working or the teaching. So in that way, we worked with the virtual meets, we worked with the workflow, and immersive learning tools were used. So in that way, it was very comfortable for us, and I think we all must appreciate the efforts of our teachers, those who were able to immediately shift to these modes, and they were able to give, not wasting the time. And for the last 1.5 years, we were very comfortable. We did the, I think, evaluations were done in a very comfortable manner, and then degrees were there. But I think at the end, everybody was saying that it is, you can't compare it with the offline mode, because it should be the hybrid learning. There should be something of online, something of offline. Uh, the whole online will not work, because they have to come to the campuses to have a social networking. Because when they are learning, they are not always learning of their own, because they have to learn from the peer. So teachers can give them the online, but that social connection is very important, which I think we all are missing. And every day students are giving us the mails, please call us back, please call us back. And I think it is a requirement now that if third wave is not there, and we request our respected COVID pandemic that please go and let us work with the students offline also. So I think this all collaboration will work. If it is something in online, something in offline, then it will be very effective. I think that is, all of us agree for it.
Thank you, ma'am. Definitely, this blended learning or the online thing, this looks like the likely future, and we'll talk about it a little while later. I'll come to Mr. Verma first. Bennett University has been known to be a very tech savvy in terms of, you have a university management system, which is an ERP basically, the LMS. So, your experience of a virtual campus, and what are some of the, since now it's more than 1.5 year, things have been operating under a virtual campus. So, if you can list down what are the best practices you have seen emerging out of these virtual campuses, and which, even in a blended learning model, academic institutions should follow.
Thanks, Rajneesh. So, thanks for calling me on this. I think I am the odd one out in this whole group, because I have the least number of years of experience with the education sector amongst all the all the big people sitting over here on this panel. So, as far as virtual campus learnings, what worked, what didn't work, how it worked. So, I think we were pretty much there when the pandemic hit, and we were able to move on to online classes very quickly. We already had the LMS and all in place, so it worked pretty fine. But one of the challenges which we faced, and I think in one of the earlier webinars I was there, and Chitkara ma'am was also there in that webinar, where, see, initial days, the challenge was, and I think even Niranajan pointed that out, the faculty were not totally comfortable with technology. See, there are people who've been teaching for years together, and they've been teaching it, in a certain way. So for them, and our expectation that, they will overnight switch and become very savvy using an LMS, using videos, using presentations, it doesn't work like that. So the best of technology given, if you are not comfortable with it, is as good as not having technology at all. So that was something where we focused and we worked on, where we worked towards making the faculty more comfortable using the tools. That seemed to have worked well, because just about maybe 3-4 weeks back, I was going through a set of discussions and interviews with a large number of students in some initiative we are starting. And I was pleasantly surprised that they came up with a lot of good stuff which they felt was much better doing online versus actually being physically there in a campus. And one of the key things which they pointed out to everyone's surprise was that, when you have a physical campus, so 4:30, 5:30, everyone packs up, goes home, and that's it, end of the day. While in the virtual mode, they've had interactions with faculty at 8, 9, 10 in the night. They've had interactions on weekends. They've had group sessions on, clearing doubts, discussing projects, doing all of that stuff. So to us, the worry which, and this is related to, what Aditya and Vineet also pointed out, that this whole thing in the mind of online education equal to distance education. To us, it was a very pleasant surprise that the students were so kicked in life that they were able to get a much longer day to work with the faculty. And similarly, on the collaborative part, so our take on collaborative learning is a bit different from most of what has been expressed. I think our whole experience of students collaborating with each other or students collaborating with faculty, that was a very, very eye-opening experience. See, we never believed, so our students in the journalism team, they bring out a newspaper every year. It's called the Times of Bennett. So it's brought on a periodic basis. And none of them had ever experienced bringing out a paper without being together and working on it, as an editorial team, as a content team, etc. And this is the first time where all these students were in their own hometowns and in their own places, and they collaborated over the net virtually to create that whole paper, which finally got printed into a 8-page or a 16-page kind of outcome. And they were themselves very surprised that they were able to do that. So I think that was, this whole virtual thing has brought a lot of learning experience to kids about things which were at one point of time thought of cannot happen, and I think we as people should understand that there are a lot of good things we've learned thanks to COVID. While there are, of course, a lot of bad things which have happened. But the good things that we've learned, we should not forget them. And this has definitely taught us that, this whole myth that we had, ki office nahi gaye to kaam nahi hua, is something which is history. So work will happen, work will continue to happen. Work days will get elongated. Work weeks will get elongated. But I think a lot of what we always thought cannot happen by sitting away from your team, away from others, that myth has got blown away. So that is something which we keep on talking to our teams. We keep on, reminding them that they shouldn't go away. Today, as we talk, while we are not getting the students back on campus yet. And I hope Madhu ma'am is right that COVID goes away very quickly. While I am of the opinion that, there will never be a normal anymore. The new normal will be something very new. So I guess we have, in any case, close to 100+ people coming in every day to campus. So they are the non-teaching teams. There are parents coming in to visit the campus every day. We get about 60, 70 of them walking in every day to look around at the campus. This will continue. My only worry, and this is more also as a parent, is that we can only tell the kids not to cluster around together, to maintain social distancing, to wear masks. But beyond a point, you can't really, monitor them beyond a point. When they get into their hostels, what they do is only what they know what they do. How many CCTV cameras you will put up and how many security guards will patrol around is all very theoretical, right? And the best example that I can give you is that this year in January, when I came from Bangalore into Delhi, and we had organized after a long gap one sales training program. The first thing I see when I get out of the airport is this kulche chole wala one ready, and there are some 50 guys standing around it. And right next to that is another guy with chart, and the third guy with some Jaljeera. And I was telling the driver, I said, so Delhi mein to COVID hua hi nahi, with the kind of people that are there. So if grown-ups will behave the way they do, you can all imagine how the kids will behave in the way they do. So I think when we talk about physical and virtual put together, there's a lot which can still be done on virtual learning. And there are certain aspects which you cannot, and in the current scenario, cannot replicate from a physical to a virtual. So it will be there. But I guess we and the parents, we all need to be very clear and careful that end of the day, COVID or no COVID, the way we behave when we come back to campus, it's our responsibility. Yeah, I can very well understand kids are very, very keen. I mean, we get about 100 plus mails every day. Kids writing saying, please call us back to campus. When are you opening the campus? While this was on, I've already got 5 mails from my sales team saying, parents are asking, what do I tell them? When will the campus open? Honestly, I'm a parent. We have a daughter who's getting into her 3rd year now. The child is very upset and the parent is very upset that everyone is at home. Right? They are not used to being together such a long period of time. So be it. The question to be answered is, what is more important? Feeling happy that you're not together for such a long period of time, or feeling happy that you are alive? That's the only question to be answered. So learnings are very simple, that we need to work on and work with the faculty, with the non-faculty people, make them comfortable with technology, and then your whole virtual campus or online teaching, all of that becomes a cakewalk. But if we do not support them at this point of time and we expect them to learn on their own and become champions, then it's a challenge. So one point I kind of agree or not agree with what I think Aditya was saying was on this whole people understanding now the difference between distance education and online education. There is still a huge gap in that understanding. Most of the people still believe online education is like distance education, which is not. Okay, and I think it will take time. A lot of people who were so upset with this virtual classrooms last year are lesser upset now. Hopefully that percentage of lesser upset people will grow over time. Because one of the very interesting thing which quite a few kids told me during their interviews was, so I asked them, I said, this whole myth ki online education mein kuch padhai nahi hoti, it's all, story and all that. So a number of them told me, they said, you see, sir, finally, whether it's online or offline, it's up to the student. I can be in class and I cannot be there. I can be there physically, but I'm not there in class, right? And to me, as a parent, one big advantage I see of online learning or these virtual classrooms is I at least know that my kid is sitting in front of the laptop and seeing something happening on the screen. Versus when the kid is at the campus, I don't know where the kid is on the campus. In the class, not in the class, outside the campus, inside the campus. That is something we as parents understand and realize once we see virtual classes and online classes going on. So that's from my side.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very existential question that you put up. I'll come back to you, Dr. Hiranandani. Basically, a little bit of crystal ball glazing. We will, as Mr. Varma said, will live in this new normal where blended learning is, and some form of COVID, some waves will be a necessary evil. So where do you see this blended learning heading? That can be in terms of the faculty, in terms of the students, and how do you see a more feasible and a model which is emerging, which will at the same time take care of some of these social challenges, but more importantly, still impart quality education?
I think you will see 3 models evolving. The first model will be of offline learning completely, where institutions will not do online learning and they will continue to follow the older path and they will exist along with the others. On the other hand, online learning will take off to the moon. You're going to see a huge amount of takeoff on the online learning. This will be based on the current colleges also going online in various respects, as it is already happening. You will get new courses, academia, which will be there. You will get continuous learning and all age learning, which will go on. So the online platform is going to take off to the moon in a very, very, very substantial way in the future. The middle part of blended learning, I think, is the best, wherein institutions of merit will need classroom learning and will definitely dwell upon it, and centers of excellence that we are seeing in various institutions globally as well as in India. The offline learning of the classroom will definitely be the one centers of excellence which will continue to do. There will be centers of excellence, there will be centers of research, there will be centers of collaborative learning, there will be centers of interactive learning. So those things are going to be the blended. So the shift has definitely taken place, wherein the acceptability of online platform is definitely taking rule to roost. But it is not to say that the old is eliminated. That's not going to happen immediately, at least not in India. I don't think it will take place even any part of the world in terms of it. So I don't think that is there. But number of students which is there. The other part of it is that the NEP policy which came in at the time of COVID has supported this blended learning. So to that extent, governments and bureaucracies have been very, very slow in the past to take up with new ideas and new methodologies to happen. Now that is accepted. So I think COVID situation and NEP policy 2020, which has been issued, is very much supportive with the idea of blended learning, and this is part of the new things which is definitely going to do. But you will now get newer centers of excellence like we are seeing over here, whether it is in terms of Ashoka, whether it is Apeejay, whether it's Bennett, whether it is Chitkara, all these institutions, you will get more institutions of excellence which will come up, whether they are blended or otherwise. But I'm looking forward to that part of it, which will ultimately turn India back into a center of education, which it is not today. In the sense that in the good old days, people came to India, even in historically with Nalanda being there, we were the centers of education in the universe, on earth. It has now shifted to the Western countries, to China, to other countries. We would like that with this new change which has taken place, that in the next 5 years, I do believe that we should again come back to that center, wherein we will have centers of excellence that we have, and where preferred students will remain to study in India, and students overseas will also want to come and study into India and have the necessary form. So my looking forward is more conducive to change. That is what has happened and is going to happen now in a structured sort of way. Previously it happened as an emergency to take place of the shutdown that took place, but I think it will help us to move into forward. So very positive elements in terms of doing the change that is taking place. And I think a large number of bureaucratic people don't want to lose powers. So I'm a little worried that they will still come in the way of this change. And that frightens me terribly. Because in the past, I have seen many of the educationists, or actually, I don't know how to call them, so-called bureaucrats looking after education, not educationists. They cannot be called educationists. But bureaucrats looking after education, actually creating more problems than they solve, and not providing for centers of excellence. So we will definitely see many more institutions of excellence if the NEP is given the real direction and support which is there, and people like those who are on the panel today actually are given the liberty to put up much more centers of excellence in terms of education and be able to grow this in a proper manner. Very positive for looking after the future. I feel the next 5 to 10 years will be area where education will take a leapfrog into the whole thing for the future. I'm very positive.
Thank you, sir. The most important point you mentioned, that the positive impact of NEP could be the centers of excellences if they come up. Mr. Berlia, I'd like your comment on the centers of excellence, and one point which you earlier touched upon, why this virtual campuses and virtual education in the long run is not feasible, the socio-economic condition of Indians considered. So, keeping that in mind, and having at the same time keeping in mind that this new normal situation will persist maybe for years to come, and so we have to sort of compromise onto some sort of blended learning or virtual education model. So now, keeping these two contradictory things in mind, the socio-economic condition and as well as the need for the blended learning, how do you think the model will emerge, and what is your idea about these centers of excellences?
Actually, I fully echo what Sri Hirandani ji has been saying on this. I think so. A few simple things that I would like to add. I don't think we're going to live with COVID forever. We have 500,000 people die from tuberculosis every year. I don't see us having shut down the country anytime in the last 11 years for those poor 500,000 who have died from TB. I think, and that's per year, by the way, WHO figures. I think COVID will, in the next 1 year, 1.5 years, will be handled by India. I have full confidence now that we have new vaccines, we have a new systems, people are getting this. Few good scientific studies. Our department of pharmaceutical in our university is working with on the ground clinical trials to understand things like transmittability, to understand surface transmissions. And I'm fortunate to get early access to some of those studies. Happy to share them privately. I can't do so publicly. It's very, very positive. I think we are pretty much by the mid of next year. I don't see this being a new normal from a COVID perspective. I would like to focus on India, though. I think worldwide there's going to be a different thing that's going to happen on how blended technology and education will take forward and what will happen in India. In India, we have come after 20 years of being in the dark ages of education. The NEP has finally arrived. And I do mean dark ages. After a series of band-aids on all of our wounds on how the regulatory frameworks have done, we've now finally seen a comprehensive attempt at reforms. And my full kudos to the Indian government for doing a fantastic job on this. That said, not many people have actually read the NEP. A lot of them talk about it. And I think everybody in the audience should please go read line by line, because it's a phenomenal document. A couple of things which, if you're crystal balling for the next 5 years, that will definitely happen. One, on the centers of excellence, we are going to see a massive number of colleges and universities and higher education institutions close down in the next 5 years. And this is a sad thing, but is a good thing. And the best thing we all can do is to ensure that this happens with grace, which happens with empathy, and which happens in a way that the ecosystem is strengthened. Automatically, because the high bar of standards the NEP sets, this will for sure require a large number of people who are operating either in a lawless regime or with a very strained system of regulations will finally be brought to a certain international level of standards. And I assure you, and the NEP itself says it, that they expect a large part of the ecosystem to not be able to handle these new standards. But on the other hand, when we talk about the socio-economic part of India, the NEP talks about a 6% annual investment of our GDP in education. I'll give you a figure. My alma mater, Harvard University, for example, its annual budget, rupee for rupee, dollar for dollar, is equal to the annual budget of the entire central government of India in education, for higher education. Now, when you have such a, and if you're talking about creating global institutions of excellence, if you're talking about competing globally, if you're talking about hiring global faculty, if you're talking about doing all of this globally, right, you cannot have a situation in which we are, as a country, being outspent by the top 40, 50 universities and colleges in the US on a singular basis. We need to find an upgraded model in India. Now I won't comment whether it's a private partnership or a social system or a non-profit thing or getting FDI in as such. But the fact is that to cover our socio-economic system, to bring the standards up to where we see the NEP is, that will require hundreds of thousands of crores in investment. And that is not going to come under the previous model, pre-NEP model that we've been trying to run in our country. Einstein's theory of insanity, doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results. That's not going to happen. So we all have to face the facts in the music that regardless whether it's virtual, blended, online, offline, everything, the sheer amount of investment that is required to upgrade the Indian ecosystem to a level where we can deliver not just for the privilege, and every student who attends all the university present here ultimately are privileged, even if they're from a weaker socioeconomic background. Every university here on this panel gives full scholarships to meritorious students, but they can only take a limited number of students per year. We can't take the hundreds and thousands, the millions of students who are coming in, and they deserve a great education as an Indian citizen and as an Indian resident. That will only happen when we are able to find a sustainable, workable model to bring that level of funding that the ecosystem needs. Now, if you are talking simply about technology, blended education, all, I think I echo Dr. Hiranandani's sentiments here. The one good thing what's happened is that we've done in what 10 years would have happened, we've done in 1 year. We have created a capacity building. We have created a large number of students who are now finally a little bit comfortable with virtual online learning, right? So even if we go back to, let's say, a fully physical campus world and we do no blending, they carry that ability with them. So one, I really hope we are looking at lifelong learners, because they have now for them to access an online course or to do a blended learning once they join the workforce or they become entrepreneurs, it's much more easy. There's no mental block. They've done it already for a year and a half. And second, we've now trained so many faculty members to also deliver online. One of the primary problems that we were all facing maybe 3 years ago in doing fully virtual campuses, and we've tried it before, is getting faculty who are comfortable with it. Now you have comfortable students, you have comfortable funders, you have comfortable regulators, you have comfortable faculty. My only hope and pratna, and I think Dr. Hiranandani said it much more than I did, so I won't say it in such extreme terms. The devil will always be in the implementation details. I think the NEP as a policy is absolutely fantastic. State-wise, center-wise, our internal research organization has shown that we need about 14 different major acts and laws to be changed. None of those have been changed so far. And once it goes through the bureaucratic process of getting it fully redone, I can only hope the spirit of the NEP is covered, if not the details, in really going forward. But I am deeply positive that we will get out of this soon. I believe we have another year maximum to go with COVID as it is. There will be a new something or the other will come, but not the way we have had to deal with it right now. The science is getting better. Our ability to handle it's getting better. And yes, blended technology, and here is to stay. The last thing which I leave with, one of the interesting things which I had done, this is now years ago, I had done my a master's thesis, so to speak, at Harvard Business School on 300 years of what education policy had happened and the management of education. And the fundamental question which I emerged from that is that every time I asked a senior leader in education, why 4 years? Why not 3.5? Why 3 years? Why not 2 years? Why not 1.5? Why do we have a summer break? What is the semester system? Why the quarter system? And you go back to the history and you go back to, because farmers in the 12th century had to go back to do harvest, and the British started this and the US started this. I think this is a phenomenal opportunity for us to rethink how we structure education in the country. NEP supports that. And that itself will lead to the unbundling. I'm a big believer in formal education, in degrees, in structured programs, because I think that is the need for 99% of our students who come in. There's 1% super motivated, super funded, super resource students who will do wonderfully well regardless of whether we are there or not. But the vast majority of the country needs structured programs in which they will thrive. That's where we come in. But if you ask me, why are we sticking to things that were invented 300 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, when we have seen the other side of it? We've only peeked at it, to be frank. I think that is a conversation we need to have for the next 5 years to really understand where education is going.
Sure. Thank you. I'll come to you, Dr. Madhu. More specific area, you touched upon that the assessment part. That is very critical, especially since higher education students ultimately are going for a career, a professional career, or in the industry. And the assessments or the examinations that have happened the way this last couple of years, and there has been challenges, and in terms of industry accepting, there has been a hesitation, and this has even a psychological effect on the students. So, how do you, from a Chitkara perspective and overall from the academic institution perspective, look at how this assessment system, keeping in mind this situation might go on for some time, how can this be better streamlined and improved further?
Luckily, Rajneesh, I think you have asked me a very pertinent question because my background is education and I am into teaching for the last 46 years. So I know that always there was a challenge. It was not only the how to teach and how they are learning. The very important component of education was always that how we are evaluating them. So this problem was, I think that was in every institute and every higher education or school education, it was always there. So since my background is education, so we were talking about the Bloom's taxonomy, and Bloom's taxonomy has given us a great platforms to work on that how to assess a student. So if you see the top of the Bloom's taxonomy, it is always the question who was of creativity. So how to? So I think during pandemic, when were sitting at home and the offline, online sessions were there, offline they were not coming. So how to assess them? How the summative evaluations are to be done? How the formative evaluations are to be done? So I think there was the need of a great assessment system which we are failing. I think we are always asking yes, no questions, or I think we took the path of multiple choice questions and MCQs were done, where all the four options were there, but nobody was knowing that how to put the fourth option, which is a distractor. So I always tell the teacher that there should be a distractor where the student is distracted from the right answer. So that should seems to be very right, but that is not right. So in that way, their creative, I think that knowledge is increased if their assessment is done in a very proper manner. So I think we have to create questions that require the higher order thinking. And instead of having students respond to questions that can be answered in yes or no, or that can be answered by simply web search or even by finding the answers in their textbooks. So we have to create the questions that are on the analysis type, that is on the synthesis type, that is something of the evaluation level, and it is all written in Bloom's taxonomy. So when you talk about NEP, NEP is also talking about the very importance to be given to the evaluation. So I think you should put the varied type of questions. The teacher should refrain themselves from having an exam with all multiple choice or true and false questions. So normally I think during pandemic we did that it was very easy to make, and teachers were doing it. But I think if you have some open-ended questions, it is very difficult for a teacher to make those type of questions. So in Chitkara University and in Chitkara International Schools also, what we are doing that for the last 4 or 5 years, we are during the summer vacations, we are going with the FDPs where we are concentrating on that how to make a question paper, what type of questions to be there, where you are able to evaluate them in all the verticals of their knowledge. Because it's very important that sometimes it happens that multiple choice questions are there and a student who is of higher level of learning or the thinking, he is getting less marks, but a student who we think that it's a very average student, he is getting more marks. So I think the problem is not with the teaching or with the learning of the student, but problem is how we are assessing them. So it should be a blended, so some questions should be at a different level. So now, for example, Aditya was talking about NEP, that NEP is there and we all have to read about it. So if you see in that, there is a very extensively written about ABC, that there should be an academic bank of credits. So what we can do is that with this assessment, we can give them the liberty to go through the different, you can say, webinars or different online lectures. It can be with the Coursera, or it can be with edX, or with any of the platforms. They can go there, they can be evaluated by them, or if they're not able to be evaluated by them, you can evaluate them. They can have the assessment by us, and that can be a part of their ABC. So in academic bank of credit, that module or that result can be added into this. So I think that NEP has given us so much liberty to work on these components, and I think this is the first time any policy came where there was given the liberty to the educational institutes to have some type of flexibility in their systems. So now, for example, you were talking about the multidisciplinary. NEP is very clear about it, that the student should go for the different options along with their main study habits. So now come will be challenge for the evaluation, how to evaluate that particular child, how to put that assessment into the ABC account, or how we have to do this. So there is a very simple solution for this, that there should be a requirement of a teacher to do the questions which are not only yes or no, or which are not only multiple choice. So there should be at a very different paces. So they can go according to their own pace, and they can attend those question papers. It will be a very good flexibility for the students, because if you know that in our classrooms, there are different type of students. Some are below average, some are average, some are very above average. So when you are making a question paper, according to keeping in mind, normally what we do in education system, what we do is we make a question paper, or we teach according to the middle level of students. It's our tendency of doing that. So there is a problem with the below average, and there is a problem with the above average. So we have to do something for evaluating their efficiencies with a different mindset. So I think now there is a great challenge, and I just request all my listeners here that please go through it, that what is the this system of evaluating them, and how you can do the assessment, how you can frame the question papers, which is a
Sure.
great. So I think that is a need of the art, all of us to understand that the assessment in this mode is very, very important. That is why then we can be able to evaluate the students of their fullest development.
Sure.
Thank you, Rajneesh. I think that was a best question you have asked from me, because I'm very near to, this is very near to my heart, that how to evaluate. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So before concluding, I'll come to Mr. Varma. You have the last word, and I'll put a couple of things which all the panelists have said. One, there was a general consensus that we have to come back to more of physical mode of learning. There was a general consensus that NEP as a policy is good, but really reservations about the way the bureaucratic implementation and interpretation of it is done. And thirdly, we talked about the socioeconomic condition of in the Indian polity. So going forward, what do you expect? Again, a bit of crystal ball gazing. What will be your assessment in terms of the NEP, the implementation challenges from the bureaucratic side, and how would ultimately the model emerge by all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, the educationists, even the bureaucrats and the students, how things will emerge according to you?
See, the 3 points that you made. So socio-economic condition we can't change. It's not in our hands. It will take its own time to change. Now, whether there will be more physical, less virtual, again, there are lots of programs where the majority can be done virtually, more innovatively, more creatively. And there are some portions of those programs which do not, as of now, have an option but to do physically. So that is part of life. It'll happen. It'll go like that. Coming to NEP, see, the intent is good. Okay. But the intent is only good till the time you implement it well. And execution is always the key to the success or failure of any plan that you draw. If your intent of execution is not in the right direction, the best of plans will fail. In fact, there's an excellent book called Execution by Hammer and Champy, and I always recommend that to my teams and to many people I've worked with. It's a brilliant book, very simply written. It kind of hammers into you that if you do not execute well, 90% plus of the time, the reason of failure of a plan on an organization is if you don't execute well. So, and one of the things which I kind of agree, not agree is, so it's got nothing to do with whether a person is a bureaucrat or an educationist or this thing. It's all got to do with, does the person have the right intent at the right time? Okay. And if the intent is for the good of the larger set of society and people, then there is no way that NEP will not work. Because if you go into whatever level of detail for NEP, a lot of it was already there, maybe not being done the way one would be able to see it openly and physically. A lot of it is not rocket science. It just needs a little bit of opening up of the mind and, putting that into place. If the intent is in the right place, it's definitely one of the best things that can happen. And it is nothing which is going to, so honestly, it is not going to, make us better than the rest of the world. Because a lot of what NEP says is already there in many other universities and across the world. The smallest of the colleges in US or UK will have the same thing already in place. So we're not going to become, super successful and totally out of the world if we implement NEP. But it's high time that we get there. It's high time we get there. Because if we don't get there even now, and that's another thing I would like to thank COVID for, that having pushed us into it at a much faster pace than we normally would have. But now if we don't go about sincerely implementing it and before implementing, we have to believe in it. So 5 years from now, if you ask me what do I see and what does my crystal ball tell me, I think 5 years from now, the expectation of the kids we will be taking into higher education will be very different from the ones who are coming in now. They will be far more demanding. They'll be far more creative. They'll be far more knowledgeable because the world every day is opening up more and more in terms of information availability. So if we as, people working with higher education institutions do not adapt very quickly, the kid will leave us behind, is what I can say.
Thank you. I think I would thank all the panelists, and this has been very, we had about 500 plus audience listening to this. So it would be very insightful and very impactful discussion with some very critical areas emerging, and for which obviously a panel of 1 hour can't have all the answers. But at least there are certain pointers towards the directions which we were taking. So I would like to thank all of you, Mr. Varma, Dr. Chitkara, and we had Mr. Berlia, Dr. Hiranandani, and Mr. Vineet also on the panel. So thanks to all the panelists, and warm thank you from APAC News Network once again, and have a great day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Varma ji. Namaskar.